Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, where we keep you informed, engaged, and entertained. Welcome to the show, whether it's welcome for the first time or welcome back. In either case, let me introduce myself. My name is Amy Johnson, and I'm going to be your host for today's show. That would be episode 330 of the Canadiens Connection podcast, titled Second Half Surge. Can the Canadiens make a playoff push? Oh boy, tantalizing stuff that we're going to get into today. And when I say we, let me introduce my co-host who is here in the studio with me every week. He is our founder and president of Rocket Sports. His name is Mr. Rick Stevens. How you doing today?
Doing well, thanks. Good to talk to you. Good to talk to our listeners. We're exactly at the halfway point as we record this, 41 games into the season, halfway through January. And are the Canadiens in the mix? There's a bit of a buzz around the city, and fans are pretty excited about the week that was, where the Canadiens had 3 victories.
They did.
Amazing.
It's tremendous. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to get you caught up on some roster news, take a peek in on some Habs prospects, and let you know how they're doing. Great quotes of the week this week. We're going to hear some audio clips from Jakub Dobes. He's had a tremendous go of things in his first couple of weeks in the NHL. So we're going to hear a bit from him as well. And then in our second segment, we are going to look at Kent Hughes' mid-season press conference that took place earlier this week. We're going to kind of break down things that he talked about in that press conference and look at it in terms of what's ahead for the Canadiens to round out the second half of this season, which of course also means we're going to start to talk about the trade deadline as well and kind of get caught up on what the latest speculation is that's swirling around about Canadiens players potentially up for grabs this year at the trade deadline. So it's going to be an interesting second segment that you're not going to want to miss. We'll have, of course, a Canadiens Connection question of the week for you to answer in that segment as well. And then in our third segment, we'll get you caught up on some other content from us that you might have missed this week, as well as we've got some really tremendous viewer and listener comments and replies and submissions from last week that we are going to bring to you. We've got some from Facebook. We've got some from a great email that was sent in. We've got some YouTube comments. So maybe yours was one of the ones that we selected to read on today's show.
From some longtime listeners and some from some new listeners as well. So a real nice mix there.
We love that. And don't forget, it is an interactive podcast. It's one of our favorite segments of the show is the third segment where we get to let you have your say and we get to hear from our listeners and viewers and loyal fans. So if you want to be part of that conversation and if you want to make your opinion known or have a question or a comment and as I say, get a chance to be read here on the show the following week, then the best way to do that, of course, is through our text line. That's 585-3-ROCKET, 585-3-ROCKET, or leave us a comment on any of our social media platforms, on our YouTube platform. Lots of different ways to get in touch with us. But let's kick things off with a review of the 3 games that have taken place since the last time that we all got together last weekend. 3 games for the Canadiens, and none of them ended in regulation time. So fans got their money's worth all week this week. The first was Montreal. This was last Saturday night's game. Montreal visiting the Colorado Avalanche. Jakub Dobes getting his second NHL start. This one went all the way to the shootout. And while Jakub Dobes definitely got plenty of good attention for the fact that he backstopped them to a 2-1 victory in the shootout, Cole Caulfield was certainly getting everybody all abuzz in that game as well.
Cole Caulfield with his 21st goal of the season, a late, third period goal to tie the score. The game had been opened by a Colorado power play goal, Mikko Rantanen. The puck went off Rantanen's skate. So 2 games in, and no one had scored a goal with a stick against Jakub Dobes, which is interesting. But listen, Jakub Dobes to hold Colorado to 1 goal, to go through overtime, and then into the shootout where he faced Rantanen again and made the save, and Jonathan Drouin. Also in overtime, the Canadiens had a power play. It was Arturi Lehkonen, who was in the penalty box. His penalty expired. He came out of the box, received a pass, went in on a breakaway, saved by Jakub Dobes. What an incredible performance by this young man. Absolutely incredible. 22 saves and his first 2 wins in the NHL. And the kind of an odd stat, Dobes, the only Canadiens goalie to win his first 2 starts by allowing only 1 goal combined for the first 2 games.
All right, then. That's good for trivia night.
Yeah. The stats after 2 games, 2 NHL games, 2 wins, .982 save percentage, 0.48 goals against, and 1 shutout. Beat the reigning Stanley Cup champions and beat the Colorado Avalanche. That's quite a resume so far.
I would say so. The Canadiens then made a brief visit back home to the Bell Center, finally, after their lengthy, after being on the road for so many consecutive games. On Monday night, January 6th, the Vancouver Canucks came to town. This one was a little more open in terms of scoring, but it required extra minutes as well. This one finished in OT. Montreal did come out on top with a 5-4 victory against the Vancouver Canucks. Nick Suzuki with the OT winner.
Cole Caulfield opened the scoring, his 22nd goal, and then 3 consecutive goals by the Vancouver Canucks, 2 of those from JT Miller. It was a tough start for Sam Montembeault, 3 goals allowed on just 8 shots. And remember that Sam Montembeault had that really tough start the game prior to Colorado against the worst team in the National Hockey League, the Chicago Blackhawks. He didn't look good in that game. And then a rough start for him on Monday, but managed to get the win when the Canadiens rallied. Caden Gooley with his 3rd goal of the season, Laine Hutson with his 3rd goal of the season, and Kirby Dach continues to perk up and keep his little rejuvenation going, his 6th goal, and a 3-point night for Laine Hutson, which puts him maybe in the lead for the Calder Cup, the Calder Trophy conversation.
Absolutely. So then the Canadiens had a number of days in between, had a few days of no game action until Friday night when they traveled to Washington to take on the Capitals. Once again, no regulation finish here. It took extra minutes in this one as well, but it was kind of deja vu because it was an overtime win for Montreal. And once again, it was Nick Suzuki who potted the OT winner, with them coming out on top 3-2. But this time it was Dobes in the net, and another pretty tremendous victory for him.
Sensational. He was absolutely sensational. Cole Caulfield, talk about again, Cole Caulfield scored again, 23rd goal of the season. Josh Anderson with a shorty. Lars Eller. Well, that Lars Eller. It was Ethan Frank making his NHL debut, who beat Xhekaj to negate the icing, and then Frank set up Eller for the tying goal that took the game to overtime. And as you said, Nick Suzuki again, the overtime hero. Jakub Dobes, he just keeps rolling along. He has a record of 3-0-0 and 097 goals against, 959 save percentage, and with the one shutout.
Absolutely tremendous. He's really stepped up to the challenge coming up to the NHL, and he has not blinked once yet. So let's hope that keeps going.
Against top-notch teams.
Yeah, he's not playing.
Top-notch team, Capital's best team in the East. And as I said, prior to that, the Avalanche and the Panthers.
Yeah, he's doing a tremendous job. And so are the Canadiens, quite frankly. They've played 41 games. Their record's now up to 20-18-3. That gives them 43 points. And somehow they have now found themselves 5th place in the Atlantic and 20th in the NHL. What a difference a month makes.
And that chance of the percentage chance of making the playoffs has jumped way dramatically over the last month. They're up to 34% chance to make the playoffs, and now on pace for an 87-point season.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll see where it goes from here. Maybe January will be another spectacular month. In terms of the roster, Patrik Laine and David Savard still are out. They've missed 4 games apiece. They've been spotted on the ice practicing on their own. Patrik Laine allegedly with flu-like symptoms, David Savard with an upper body injury. That's all that we really know about them. We do know that Saturday morning, René Lavoie reported that Patrik Laine was out on the ice Saturday morning for about 25 minutes or so, working on his shot, I think. I don't know that sounds like he's coming back to play on Saturday night or not, but both of them still kind of a big question mark.
Yeah, even the folks at TVA Sport are raising the question, what is going on with Patrik Laine? He had to sit out 3 games due to illness last season. As you mentioned, 4 games now. And they said, TVA in their research, it's very rare for a player to miss 4 games due to so-called illness. And they actually list the players last season. So, and it was players with mononucleosis and those kinds of things. So the other thing that they point out, and you mentioned as well, was that Patrik Laine was at a charity event at a college speaking about mental illness. And that seems a little bit odd. So we don't have any further information to what's going on there. Hopefully he gets back into the lineup very, very soon.
That was when I saw the Canadiens promoting the fact that he was one of the players who went to speak on this panel. I thought, was this something that took place like a week or so ago and they're just getting around to promoting it? Because doesn't he allegedly have flu-like symptoms? So why is he out doing public speaking engagements for the team? But I don't know. It confuses me.
And we understand that it takes a different level of wellness to play an NHL game than it does go and speak at an event.
But if you're sick, you shouldn't be around other people.
Yeah, it's odd. It's weird. No question. It's very odd.
It's weird. All right. Let's switch gears and take a look at this week's Habs prospect report.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
We're going to kick things off with another goaltender who's in the prospect pipeline, Quentin Miller. Do you remember that name? Well, the young Habs goaltending prospect is changing teams. He signed with the Chilliwack Chiefs of the BCHL this past week.
Okay. Quentin Miller 2023 fourth round pick by the Canadiens. We remember him as a backup goalie when the Quebec Remparts went to the Memorial Cup. Then he took over the goal the following year, playing 27 games for them. Mid-season, he was traded to Rimouski, played 16 games with them. I believe, if I remember correctly, Rimouski gave up a first-round pick for him. This season, he's had injury and whatnot. He hasn't played at all for Rimouski, and they've kind of went on without him and replaced him, and he was kind of in limbo. So it's very rare for a player to move from the Q to the BCHL. No disrespect, but a step down. But this is a player who wants to continue his career, wants to continue playing, and it looks like he'll be given that chance. He's 20 years old, and there was no other QMJHL team that was interested in his services, but he wants to make a comeback, and it looks like he may get that opportunity with Chilliwack, and they're targeting kind of a mid-February start for him, as after he spends some time with the team. As we said, he hasn't played all season, so good luck to Quentin Miller.
Ivan Demidov. We would be remiss if we didn't take a look at how Ivan Demidov was doing this week. Unfortunately, that 6-game goal streak that he was riding came to an end on Wednesday this past week. But don't fret. It doesn't mean that he hasn't had his fair share of scoring in his 41 games played so far this season for SKA St. Petersburg. 13 goals and 18 assists for 31 points. Young man is doing just fine.
Yeah, and that game on Wednesday was the 42nd game that he was in. One thing we've noticed, even that game on Wednesday, SKA lost 5-0, but you look at ice time, 18 minutes and 37 seconds.
All right.
Have we seen that much this season?
No.
Well, no, except for about the past 5 games. And let me see, 1, 2, 3 out of the last 4 games, he's been over 18 minutes, and one of them very close to 19 minutes. His ice time, we've been talking about all season, has increased dramatically.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Kent Hughes and his midseason press conference a little bit later, but because we're talking about Demidov, let's mention that Hughes was asked about this, whether he thought that his visit, he was asked about the Canadiens' visit, the visit that it was Hughes and Le Cavalier and Bavrov that went to see Demidov in person. He was asked about if there was any connection between the fact that they visited in person and all of a sudden the ice time has jumped up dramatically. And all Hughes said was that he noticed that there was an increase in ice time, but not sure if it was related to their trip to Russia.
Okay.
That's just disingenuous. Of course.
Not sure.
Of course.
Just not sure, Rick.
Again, while we're here, he was also asked in the presser whether given the controversy about their trip, and there was considerable controversy, did he have any regrets? He said he has no apologies, no regrets. They wanted to see Demidov in person. Only one person in the organization, being Bavrov, of course, had seen him play even before they drafted him. They wanted to see him in person and convey messages to him directly. And I don't know, I found that a little bit callous given the situation in the world, and they wanted to see them, so they did it, and kind of the ethical consequences be damned. And they've gotten criticized, and there are people that believe there was no issue here. There's other people that believe strongly the other way. Dominic Hasek just roasted the Canadiens for doing what they did. The Ukrainian embassy lodged a complaint. I would have rather that Hughes at least acknowledge that and acknowledge the sensitivity of them going over. And it wasn't a situation to be just brushed off as if it didn't exist. And I guess to acknowledge the fact that they provided the team and Russia and Russian hockey with a propaganda opportunity. In the last week or so, the full 30-minute interview, the 30-minute video has been released by Russia. That was a conversation with Rotenberg on one side of the table. He's all mic'd up, and the Canadiens reps on the other side of the table. Don't waste your time. It was awkward chit chat. It was boring. It was two parties that weren't comfortable. I think Rotenberg was pretty comfortable, and he took the opportunity to, hammer his points about hockey is better when both Russia and Canada are in it, and all of that sort of thing. I a little disappointed in Hughes and would have rather him kind of acknowledge the situation, the reality, really.
Yeah, it's fine that that was the decision that they made, but maybe find a way to have be a little more diplomatic in your explanation to the public. Might have soothed some feathers along the way. Shifting gears from prospects overseas to ones that are more close to home. The Laval Rocket, let's take a look at how they've been doing. They actually, scoring has not been an issue for them this week. They beat the Abbotsford Canucks, that's Vancouver's affiliate, 6-2 last weekend. And then Caden Primo, with his second game since being assigned to the AHL, on Friday night, put up a 16-save shutout against the Cleveland Monsters in Cleveland. Laval winning that 5-0. And Cleveland is not, that's kind of not a small thing for them to beat Cleveland 5-0. In past years, maybe so. Cleveland has not been the strongest team in the past number of years, but this year, in fact, just within the last couple of weeks, Cleveland was at the top of the division. So Cleveland is a much more competitive team this year. So putting up a 5-0 victory over them in their own barn on Friday night is not a small thing. And they'll look to try to repeat that with another game in Cleveland on Saturday night.
Pretty big barn.
It is. They play in
the NBA.
They play in the NBA arena, so
yeah.
they regularly post. As their broadcaster even said last night, the Laval consistently puts up very big numbers league wide for attendance. The team that consistently beats them is Cleveland because of the capacity that they have available in that building, and it's a very nice building. So Jared Davidson, I should mention, had a good outing in that as well, with a 3-point night, 1 goal and 2 assists.
First star.
Yep, and doing a great job. Jared Davidson is, and so the Rocket now, they struggled a bit in December, but they've put together now a few games of wins. They are back to 21-10, 1-1 for their record, making them second overall in the North Division, fourth overall in the AHL. And Trois Rivières down in the ECHL, they just continue to soar. They won all 3 of their games this week, beating Adirondack twice, 5 goals against them, then 6 goals against them. Then they came and visited Reading, and they beat Reading 4-1. So the Lions have catapulted themselves all the way up to 3rd overall in the ECHL.
Nice.
They're just doing a tremendous job. which is good news for Laval if, knock on wood, Laval starts finding itself low on roster availability. It means that the guys who will get called up from the ECHL have also had a great deal of success so far this season, so that's a good thing. Speaking of having a great deal of success so far this season, Jakub Dobes, we've spoken quite often about him last year, this year, as far as how strong he's been since coming to the AHL and turning pro. And he certainly hasn't stopped doing that now that he's playing in the NHL. So 3-0 now on his NHL playing record for his starts. As Rick mentioned earlier in the segment, he's beaten the Capitals, the Avalanche, and the Panthers in his first 3 NHL games. He's always, we talked about this last week as well, but it's curious. I don't know if they're really trying to just see how much they can test him or what, but he's always getting the harder assignments. You know, I would have expected to see him play against Chicago, give him maybe kind of a softball game, but no, he's had the harder games, and he's accepted the challenge easily every time. And so
yeah, the first just to pick up on that, the first back-to-back, it was on the Saturday he played against Florida, and Montembeault played against Tampa. Now, Tampa's no pushover, but Tampa is the easier team to play against. Following week, back-to-back, it was Montembeault getting, as you said, Chicago, and Dobes getting Colorado. And then again, this week, that the back-to-back, Dobes gets Washington, top team in the East, and Montembeault gets Dallas on Saturday night at home. The other part, and you pointed this out, Montembeault is getting the home games, and it's Dobes who's getting the road starts.
Yeah, I could he have his debut game in front of Habs fans at the Bell Center? What? How long is he going to have to wait for that? I think he's earned that over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully this coming week we see him get a start at the Bell Center. I would certainly like that.
Just for fun, let me toss this in because Canadiens fans, especially the media, have made a big deal about goals saved above expected. That particular stat and that being meaningful when comparing goaltenders, that stat is a cumulative one that you build that up. So the expectation is that a goalie who has played 32 games like Sam Montembeault would have far greater opportunity to build that stat over a goaltender who's only played 3 games. Sam Montembeault, as we've said, he's been in the 20s ranked as far as goaltenders all season. Presently 23rd in the National Hockey League, and Jakub Dobes is 22nd.
All right.
In terms of goals saved above expected with only 3 games experience. I understand. We're not making a goalie controversy here, but interesting stat.
Absolutely interesting. So he's obviously had quite a show of things in his first few games, and the most recent one, of course, was Friday night's overtime victory against the Washington Capitals. And here's what he had to say about how he was able to remain so calm in the extra minutes.
I don't know if it's the mask, but I was a little nervous until we got in an OT because I really wanted to take the point from these guys. So when we got to the OT, I was a little bit even more calm. It's more like I really focus on grabbing points. So when we took the 1 point, I was pretty happy. We took 2. I was thrilled. So.
It's fascinating into his mindset. Yes, he was nervous in regulation time because he was focused on grabbing points. Once they got into overtime, you would think that he'd be far more nervous in overtime. No, he was calmer because they already had the point, and he was happy about that. Thrilled that they ended up getting the 2 points when Suzuki scored.
If you like that clip, you're going to probably like this one even better. When he talks about his reaction to having now completed a game where he has had to face Alex Ovechkin.
Oh, it was a dream come true. Saving his one-timer. I will probably clip that and save it in my phone somewhere. So yeah, he's an unbelievable player, and I'm just really fortunate to share the ice with him tonight.
I'm gonna clip that and just put it on my phone so I can watch myself do that anytime I want.
And that play was amazing because the save that Dobes made on Ovechkin happened when Alexandre Carrière lost his skate blade, and the Canadiens had no right D because he was on the ice and couldn't move, and for him to get the save and then eventually
that would usually
the stoppage,
be a gimme for Ovechkin.
On Ovechkin, one timer from the left face-off circle, incredible.
Those two clips were pretty fun from Dobes, but what Habs fans will start to probably quickly appreciate about him is that he's also a very sincere person. He's got some great quotes. He's certainly got a personality. He's quite a character, but he's also a very sincere thinker as well. And I think you'll see that come out in this next clip from him, when he just tries to describe how he's feeling about being in the NHL now.
Every day, I'm glad to be here. I just try to do my best job, and every day I see something that I saw either from a TV or my phone or stories. So it's really, it's just, I don't know, I can't really describe it, but I'm really just try to sink everything in. I mean, everyone is talking about a lot of stories. You see all the players since you are 3 years old, and now you can face them. It's something that you cannot really describe what the feeling inside is, But I'm just trying to, even though like my dreams come true during a game, I just try to do my job, So I feel like I'm finding a good line in between living your dream and focusing on my game.
I like the end of that.
Yeah.
Living my dream and focusing on the job that he has to do. As he says, he's facing players that he has watched and idolized for his whole hockey life.
He's quite a character, as I said, but he can be very serious and sentimental when he wants to be as well. And I think that's going to start to, that and his sense of humor, and how physical he can be in the crease as well. I think all of those things combined are going to endear him to Habs fans pretty quickly.
He's feisty. He's got good size. He's a very technical goaltender. He's got a very good glove hand.
He likes to play the puck.
He is a very good puck handler.
Yeah.
All these things have fans have started to see what you and Chris and me and Patrick Williams have seen in the AHL.
That's right. Few notes from around the hockey world. We talked last week about what a dismal, let's just not even mince words, failure this year's Winter Classic was. Well, maybe a more southern locale is what the NHL needs, because Florida is now set to host 2 outdoor NHL games next year in 2026. They're getting the Winter Classic, which is going to be held in Miami, featuring the Panthers and the New York Rangers. And then the Lightning and the Bruins are going to play each other, I believe, for the Stadium Series game in Tampa. So
Gotta have a pretty good ice plan for that.
hopefully they have something in mind.
Yeah.
We'll see how it turns out. OHL news. This is something kind of out of the blue, and we'll see what comes of this. It was something that I believe I saw Darren Dreger bring to attention on X this week. And it was a story from CHCH News that said that they had learned that the current owner of the Brantford Bulldogs in the OHL, that happens to be Michael Andlauer, who owns them, has sold the team, the Brantford Bulldogs, to Zach Hyman and his family. And that a formal announcement might be made about it as soon as Monday. I know Dreger had said that it looks like it needs OHL Board of Governors approval to complete the sale, and that something could come out early next week about that.
Michael Andlauer, Canadiens fans, just a reminder, he owned a pretty significant portion of the Montreal Canadiens, I think up around 20%. Also, he owned the Hamilton Bulldogs, the AHL franchise, when they moved to St. John's. Then he brought an OHL team and named them the Bulldogs, the Hamilton Bulldogs. Then arena difficulties. They went to Brantford. Then Andlauer sold his shares and became the owner of the Ottawa Senators, as well as having full ownership of the OHL team. And I think it was part of the plan that he would get rid of the OHL team. He has the Belleville Senators as well as the Ottawa Senators now.
And one last thing before we take our first commercial break this week, we would be remiss if we did not mention former Canadiens and Flames head coach Al McNeil, who sadly passed away this week at the age of 89, sending, of course, sincere condolences to his friends and family.
The Al McNeil story and his story with the Montreal Canadiens is a fascinating one, absolutely fascinating. He played... I think he played about 500 games and one season with the Canadiens, but he was he's from Nova Scotia, coached the Canadiens AHL affiliate, the Nova Scotia Voyageurs. 1970-71 season, he was brought up to be an assistant coach by Sam Pollock with Claude Ruel. Claude Ruel was having some difficulties by Christmas time, thereabouts. And Sam Pollock didn't waste any time. He wasn't going to let the Canadiens miss the playoffs 2 seasons in a row. Oh, my goodness. That he turned the reins over to Al McNeil. He also, Pollock brought in Frank Mihaljevic, which was a big trade, and then this unknown kid named Ken Dryden that Al McNeil said, he's my starter for the playoffs. Incredible story. He was just an amazing guy. Took the Canadian, won the 1971 playoffs with Dryden. And then there was an incident with Henri Richard. Henri Richard said something, and later he said he would regret saying he was mad that he didn't get the usual ice time and said Al McNeil's the worst coach. The Francophone community turned against Al McNeil, being an Anglophone, and Sam Pollock had a big issue on his hand, sent his Stanley Cup winning coach back to the AHL, back to Nova Scotia, where he won 3 Calder Cups after that, which was incredible in and itself. And then a solution fell into Sam Pollock's hands, and that was Scotty Bowman, which we know how that went and the rest of the 70s went. You want to read more about Al McNeil. The Habs is my Bible, my go-to for the early history, of course, written by Dick Irvin. And there's lots of other wonderful nuggets about Al McNeil, a very important key man in the history of the Montreal Canadiens, and certainly what turned into dynasty of the 1970s. So we pay our respects to Al McNeil. One thing before we go, when we have these thoughts, I would just want to send our thoughts to those affected by the fires in the Los Angeles area, and all those that have been affected, and to those who are providing support. What first responders? I have first responders in my family. I know what a difficult job that is, and there is a Canada connection. There is a Quebec connection with those Canadair super scooper planes from Quebec that are there. They pick up seawater in the Santa Monica Bay and then dump the load on the fires to help support. So our thoughts with all those affected there.
Absolutely. And hopefully we start to get some relief there sometime soon. All right. We are going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast, but it'll be a short one and you'll want to stick around because coming up next is segment 2, our big topic for this week. Kent Hughes speaks, mid-season insights and trade deadline plans. You are not going to want to miss that. So stick around. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Have you played Pick 6 from DraftKings yet? What are you waiting for? You better get on it. The playoffs are here and time is running out. As the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. You select 2 or more players, choose if they'll have more or less of a stat like touchdowns, yardage, sacks, that kind of thing. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. My name, once again, is Amy Johnson. You can find me on X at FlyersRule. And with me in the studio is our president and founder of Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You'll want to be sure you're following him on X at Rocket Sports. That is our main account that puts out all of our content on all the various platforms, whether it's our podcast or any YouTube content or articles either on hockeybuzz.com or on our Substack. So you want to be sure you're following there as well. And while you're at it, be sure you just make sure that subscribe button has been tapped, whether you are listening to the podcast on a podcast app or if you are watching on YouTube. So Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes met with the media on Wednesday this week in Brossard, and it's his annual mid-season review that takes place at the halfway mark of the season. He talked a bit about the difficult start that the Canadiens had at the beginning of the season, which is putting it mildly, I suppose. He talked about developing team culture And he talked about his plans for the upcoming NHL trade deadline. And so I guess to unpack what Kent Hughes did say, Rick, I guess we'll start with that first thing. He's, talking about the Canadiens' difficult start to the season, and he acknowledged that they obviously got off to a very slow start.
Yeah, it was, he said, I don't think this is going to surprise anyone. We weren't happy with our start. Of course not. And he said the reason was, there was a few reasons, but that there were, as a team, we weren't playing up to our abilities and our potential. And there were several players that weren't playing up to their individual abilities. And he said that that just affected confidence, and then there was a kind of a downward spiral. And he said that credit to the coaches for trying to make all sorts of adjustments. We know there was adjustments to the defensive system, adjustments to the power play. And then he said things kind of turned around, and players who weren't playing to their potential came back and started playing better. And yeah, some of that is true. The other thing he said with respect to that tough start was that the management was shocked, was really surprised, and that it was the first time that they had experienced a hostile environment in Montreal. And, they had talked all the time about, particularly with respect to the draft, but also when they make trades or sign free agents, that they have to consider the hothouse environment, the focus in Montreal, and can players handle that? And it's funny because apparently management has to be capable of handling that too. And that this caught them as by surprise. And maybe that's because for the first couple of years, everyone, fans, media, was throwing bouquets. That Hughes had fleeced everybody else, and the scouts were brilliant, and Marty St. Louis was a genius, and when they were going through that tough period, I wouldn't call it hostile. It was pretty mild, the criticism, and in some cases it wasn't even criticism. It was just asking the tough questions, the media asking the tough questions. And we remember that Marty St. Louis did not like that at all. No. He was hostile towards the media. He swore. He marched off. And so Kent Hughes said they're going to have to spend some time preparing a strategy on how to deal with negativity of the market. Which I found, and maybe that's to manage expectations, maybe that's to manage their messaging. I'm not sure, but I found that a little odd that they're going to have to deal with things differently,
or just sorry, it's not always going to be kittens and rainbows. When particularly the further into the rebuild they get, and when they finally transition from being out of the rebuild, which at that point they should be perennial contenders for a good stretch, then that means the more competitive the team has become, the more successful the team becomes, the higher the stakes are for the fans who are invested in them and for the media who covers them. And that means the questions are going to get tougher. So this isn't going to be something that's just going to magically go away.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree 100%.
In terms of the fact that they've turned that around now, the first couple of months were abysmal and forgettable, but December miraculously turned into something really exceptional for the team. But Kent Hughes, wanting to be sure that everyone, media and fans alike, most likely temper their expectations and don't get too far ahead of themselves either.
Yeah, and he said something to the effect of, "We're only one game over 500. That was Wednesday. We haven't accomplished anything yet." And then he talked about what happened in Buffalo and Detroit specifically, how they came close to being in the playoffs and then have gone through a period of regression. So we don't want to get overconfident here and feel like we're done. Still lots of work to do. And we're not ready to take a victory lap just yet. I'm paraphrasing.
Right. Only one game above 500. As he said, haven't accomplished anything yet. So does that mean that there is a change to the plan? Becomes the next obvious question.
Yeah. And I think he kind of reiterated, what they had intended, that the plan was to be in the mix this year, and they said it rather openly. And he tried to clarify what they meant by that, and he said, it wasn't really for the public at large; it was more an internal goal, which I think is.
We have a clip about that coming up in a little bit. Yeah,
it's hogwash, really, because multiple people said it. They sat and had meetings to come up with the right phrase to capture what their goal was, on and on and on. But he said we wanted to be in the mix in order to progress. And yeah, we'll get into that when we talk when we play the clips. And he referenced about Tampa and whatnot. But does it affect the way that they're going to approach the deadline? He said too soon to tell. And then he went into a bit of discussion about the trade deadline.
Well, as you say, he says, well, it's still too early to determine how the Habs are going to approach the trade deadline, which I'm going to use your word again and say hogwash. The trade deadline is not that far away. Yes, of course, they would have already, before December happened, when things were going so poorly, he would have already had been starting to map out some ideas of what he might need to do at the trade deadline. December will have changed that, most likely, at least a little bit, and he's probably already starting to kind of sketch out in his mind, if not on paper, how his priorities might be shifting. I understand that he's not willing to put that out there yet, but I think it is still in a place where it's not necessarily too early to determine how he's going to approach the trade deadline. I think he probably has kind of an option A, an option B, and maybe even an option C. And how they play over the next 2 to 3 weeks is going to start to narrow the focus of which option he's going to try first.
Yeah, a couple things there. First of all, he has spoken with every single team in the league, every general manager in the league. He's spoken with. He knows what's available. He's conveyed what he's willing to do with some options, and he's spoken to them. Probably more than once, some of the teams, and they've war gamed it out. They've mapped out scenarios as a management group already. They've done that. I keep reminding people that one of the first things that Kent Hughes said is given his experience as a player agent, I am going to leverage the media. So how is he leveraging the media here? Well, you don't want to say that you're going to go in and you're going to be trading away assets at the trade deadline, because then your trading partner said, well, you have to trade that guy away. He's a unrestricted free agent. He's doing a couple of things here. He's prepping the market. He's sending a message broadly to other NHL GMs that they don't have to do anything. It'll depend on how his team plays. And he's sending a message to his players because he's not going to say that they're going to make trades because that's going to demotivate perhaps the players who are focused now on being in the mix and getting to a playoff spot, a wild card spot. So this is all about, for Kent Hughes, leveraging the media. You can't take everything he says
at face value.
You just can't.
One thing that I think you probably can take a little more at face value is his conversation, his comments, I should say, about asset management and that draft picks that get acquired, maybe in this trade deadline, are likely not going to be short-term draft picks.
Yeah, he said that they have plenty of draft picks in 2025, and he itemized them so that if they acquire draft picks, that they will be on down the road. They might be for future years, 2026 and 2027, to kind of fill out their stockpile, and that's the way they would, if they're acquiring assets, it will be for the future.
One thing he was asked about, and he said he's open to, he was asked about this kind of emerging trend with GMs and teams who are signing or re-signing players and opting for the deferred salary structure.
Yeah, he said that with respect to deferred payments, that any kind of salary structure that benefits the team, they'll be willing to look at. He looked at it as when he was on the player agent side, and he's looked at it now in management, and they have some experts to help them. The specific example was a player playing in California. He said the tax system is different in California, obviously, than in Canada, that Canada has some specific regulations that they have to pay attention to, but they're willing to look at anything.
At anything. What about coaching help? Any changes coming on the coaching staff?
He said that'll have to come from Marty St. Louis. If Marty St. Louis requests it, then they'll and says, I need this, I need help here, then they'll go out and find it. So
no. So the answer is no, because we know that's not going to happen. He did give us updates on two particular prospects, one of which was Ivan Demidov, who we talked about in the first segment, telling media, don't hold your breath on seeing him join the Canadiens before the end of this season.
Yeah, because of his contract, the KHL, the dates, all of that. He said you won't see Demidov joining the Canadiens this season. Little tidbits, and the other tidbit is he said that he expected Michael Hage to go back to Michigan for his second year, and he talked about how that was helpful for Laine Hutson and probably would be helpful for Michael Hage, and I think Michael Hage is probably going to that'll be welcome news to him as well.
I think so as well. So let's hear a bit from Kent himself, just so that you can kind of get his actual tone and some of the things that he literally said in this conference. First of which was in reference to whether or not he would kind of open the gate and start bringing a bunch of young players into the Habs lineup.
I don't anticipate allowing the lineup to be flooded with young players, because I think if we did that, to Mark's question about like have we turned the corner, I think naturally there would be an element of regression that comes with it. So we have to remain flexible, because there are young players like Laine Hutson that come and they hit the ground running and they play like veterans and they don't seem to shrink under the spotlight or the pressure of it all. So I think in theory we have ideas about what we would like to do, but if somebody comes in and is ready to run, take the ball and run with it, then yeah. Like if there's another young Laine Hutson that comes in and he's ready for it, we're not going to not allow it because he's young. So, it'll be, in theory, wanting to have that balance, but also being flexible enough to judge things on a case-by-case basis.
Who's another young Laine Hutson? Well, maybe Ivan Demidov. I think that's who was in his mind there. And this, you put this together with, Jeff Gorton saying that he felt that the prospects were in the right place in Laval right now, that they've learned from the beginning of the season, some of the experiments at the beginning of the season, that they want their prospects to be ready. They don't want them to be calling them up and sending them back down. They want to, when their prospects join the Canadiens, they want them to stay with the Canadiens, and so that they're going to be well developed when they come out of Laval, and be open to the unusual. And maybe that was maybe Demidov is the only player who kind of fits that, but they're flexible. He said if there's another Laine Hutson.
Okay. You alluded to this a moment ago, but here is how Kent Hughes, I'm going to say, danced around the question of being in the mix, and how he's now, and you'll hear him say, at least for me, how he's kind of redefining what that phrase means, at least from his perspective, as he says.
I would take a different lens, I guess, to it. We wanted to be in the mix in the sense that in terms of progressing as a team, in terms of getting where we ultimately learn or want to get to, there's certain things that they have to experience. And Nick Suzuki's our captain. He experienced it once in his career to date, right? A playoff run. So we want this group and this young group of players to be under the pressure of learning to win when it counts. Whether ultimately they succeeded or not, it's the experience that you go through. Like if we look at Tampa, before they won their 3, they had several playoff disappointments along the way, and you learn from it. Toronto's gone through that. Maybe they're going to learn from it. We'll see as time comes. So that was the most important thing about being in the mix, was more, at least from my vantage point and Jeff's, less to do with what we communicated to the outside world about playoffs and more to do with what we hope our team went through as an experience, as a building block. Whether we can be a playoff team or not, we're in that conversation right now, and let's see how our players respond to it.
So first of all, getting it out of the way that this was more internal than, no, it wasn't. They wouldn't have found the right phrase. They wouldn't have said it so many times, from Jeff Molson to the management, Jeff Gorton, players. They wouldn't have done that if it wasn't for broadcast release. There's just, that's a little disingenuous there. As far as that it's important for the players to have, as he says, Tampa Bay had several failed playoff runs. They lost before they learned how to win, and toughened up that callus, that they had gotten from the playoff losses. Well, you have to be near you have to be in the playoffs. You have to be in the mix in order to have that experience. So again, I think it was pretty obvious what they originally meant by in the mix, and they still mean by in the mix, and they want their players, as Jeff Gorton said, to play meaningful games in March and April, even if they don't believe that they can progress too far beyond that.
After this season, I hope I never hear this phrase again in my life. I really hope I never hear this phrase again. In terms of Kent Hughes' press conference, we know that, you even talked about how not one of the reasons to not start disclosing perhaps what his intentions at the trade deadline are going to be is so that those comments don't trickle back to his locker room and some of the veterans and so forth who perhaps could be on the trade block. And that is because anytime the executives or the coach meets with the media, some or all of that is going to get back to the locker room. And here is how Nick Suzuki reacted when asked what he thought about his general manager's mid-season media availability.
Yeah, I didn't see everything. I just got informed earlier. But yeah, I like his messaging. We're not trying to, we don't think there's a long season to go. We haven't secured anything. Teams have games in hand. We have games in hand on other teams. So, it's going to be a fight all the way to the end of the season. And, guys are excited for that.
So kind of repeating, haven't accomplished anything. We got to repeat what we've done. We got to keep on the winning ways. I think that was fairly positive from Nick Suzuki on the job that's to be done in the second half. So
the next big thing that's coming is the trade deadline. And there are names that have been consistently tossed around. And so before we wrap up this segment where Kent Hughes took a look at how things stand at the midway mark, let's just get you up to date on what the latest reports have been about some of the contenders for who might be traded for the Montreal Canadiens. And of course, top of that list is going to be Jake Evans. Jake Evans is in a contract year. Jake Evans' potential next contract has been a topic of conversation among pundits. Media have started to ask him about it. And so this week, and quite frankly, Jake Evans has continued to show growth year over year over year. And this season is no different. He has been one of the best, most consistent players for the Canadiens since the beginning of the season, even when they were performing poorly. Which has led most people to correctly begin to think that he could cash in on a nice little payday with his next signing. But Pierre LeBrun, Rick, had an update about kind of where things are at with those negotiations at this stage in the game.
Yeah. Jake Evans is having a career season, and it just so happens that he is one of those pending UFAs. Nice timing on that. He's a key player with the Canadiens. His offense has been welcome. His penalty killing ability, his face-offs. He's a key player and a key reason. That fourth line is a key reason that the Canadiens have found success. Pierre LeBrun, and again, if Pierre LeBrun has the information, it's coming from the Montreal Canadiens. It's their leak. He said that there has been initial meetings with the Evans camp and with the Canadiens, and the Canadiens have told the Evans camp that they want to re-sign him. They want to give him a contract extension. But don't expect that he's going to cash in with free agent-like contract value. They can't sign him at any price. So moderate his expectations if he wants to stay in Montreal. And that interesting message. But Pierre LeBrun also said that there have been a number of players that have expressed interest in Jake Evans, and one of them is the New Jersey Devils. A player a team who wants to make a run, and they see a key player who would help their lineup.
LeBrun says, quote, "A lot of contending teams have circled his name, and they are waiting to see how the Canadiens handle this situation." So it depends on how quickly Kent Hughes wants to work. And he might wait to see what kind of offers he starts getting, because I imagine that GMs are going to start calling Kent Hughes to explore and put feelers out on what he would require to part ways with Jake Evans.
So then you have Renaud Lavoie, who came out and said that there's, both teams, both the player and the team have said that they'd like to work something out. Jake Evans is comfortable in Montreal. He would like to stay. The Canadiens know who they have in that player. They would like him to stay. Renaud Lavoie said, I don't know when and I don't know the date, but there's a wedding coming up to make sure Jake Evans stays in the organization. So it kind of fits in what Pierre LeBrun had said as well, that they like this guy. The Renaud Lavoie added, don't expect it to be in the Phil Deneau contract level at 5.5. I don't think Evans expects that. Is it $4 million? Is it $3.5 million for a longer term? That's probably the kind of money for a player who can is excellent on the fourth line, and again a key penalty killer, but also can move up the lineup. For a time this season. He's centered the third line, even the second line. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that situation.
David Savard. David Savard seems to be the consistent object of consternation as to whether he should be traded or not. It's well known on this podcast that I think that he should be. LeBrun says that Savard is likely on Edmonton's list.
Edmonton, Pierre LeBrun says that they've had their meetings already with their scouts, their pro scouts, to prepare their shopping list. They need a defenseman. They're not as picky. They said they'll take a left-hander or a right-hander, but Pierre LeBrun says that Savard is, from what he knows, is on that list. Interesting, and all the things about him being a mentor and whatnot. But when's it time for him to move on? He's going to be gone at the end of the season. Unlike Evans, I don't think there's any talk about him coming back next year. Is he worth a second-round pick from Edmonton? Is that valuable to the Canadiens? I think in the 4 games that he's missed, there's been some, earlier in the season, there was some questions about Jayden Struble. I think Jayden Struble's been much better. Certainly, Arbor Xhekaj's been much, much better since the beginning of the season. And so maybe the Canadiens have figured out that they can part ways with him, get an asset back, and not affect their lineup too much.
That brings us down to Yoel Armia and Christian Dvorak. Will one of these two get traded? Because they've been the constant subject of speculation. And is it going to be the time to move one of these two forwards?
Yeah, again, if the Canadiens are in somewhat of a playoff mix, it's in my opinion, it's unlikely to be Yoel Armia. He is a key penalty killer along with Jake Evans, and he's been very good on that fourth line this season. And for all of those reasons, a playoff-bound team might want him. But maybe you hang on to Yoel Armia and keep him as, your own rental kind of player, as he's a pending unrestricted free agent as well. And as far as Dvorak, probably less of an interest keeping him from the Canadiens, and probably less of an interest in the market as well. But I think with David Savard, with Dvorak, with Armia, with each one of those players, a trade's not going to happen unless there's salary retention. And the Canadiens, just a reminder, they only have one retention slot remaining this season. So if there is a trade at the trade deadline of those players, of those pending free agents, it's likely to only be one of them.
All right. That brings us to this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, because it was a lot to unpack from Kent Hughes in terms of what he said, what he didn't say, what he said if you read between the lines. So we want to know, how do you take all of that? How do you take what we've kind of walked through here and your own reactions to hearing some of the things that he said. What do you think about this? Does the Canadiens' recent success going 8-2 the month of December, does that recent success change Kent Hughes' trade deadline strategy? Or do you think that he kind of soldiers on with whatever plan that he already had going into the season or after the rough start of the season? So does the Canadiens' recent success change Kent Hughes' trade deadline strategy? The way to answer that question, first and foremost, you can text us on the Rocket Sports text line. That's 5853-ROCKET. You can send us an email at hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. You can reply on the YouTube channel, or you can reply on any of our other social media platforms at Habs Connection on X, Facebook, and Instagram. Lots of ways to reach out, make your voice heard. And as we do each week, we will take the best responses to that question and we will read them on the show next week. So make sure you get your answer submitted. But before we hear what you had to say about last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, we are going to take our final break on the podcast for this week. And up next, we're going to hear from some of you from email, some of you from Facebook, some of you from YouTube. Wonder who it's going to be? You got to stick around to find out. So stay with us. You're listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Have you played Pick 6 from DraftKings yet? What are you waiting for? You better get on it. The playoffs are here and time is running out. As the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like no one else. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. You select 2 or more players, choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like touchdowns, yardage, sacks, that kind of thing. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. And DraftKings is making it even sweeter for first-timers. New Pick 6 customers play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio. You are currently listening, of course, to episode 330 of the Canadiens Connection podcast. We're so glad you're with us today, each week. We always love to have you here. Don't forget, follow us on our social media platforms at Habs Connection. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The easiest way to find that is just head to InsideTheCanadiens.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure you are subscribed to this podcast as well. Throughout the week, don't forget, be sure to check at Rocket Sports on X. That will give you direct links to any of our written content. Chris G has had, of course, his weekly Lions notepad and Rocket notepad, giving you all of the details to update on the AHL and ECHL affiliates. Those sometimes appear on our Substack. They sometimes appear on our hockeybuzz.com page. So if you head over to at Rocket Sports on X, that's the best way to find those. Also, as I mentioned, be sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. Not only does this podcast come out every Monday on YouTube, I also then occasionally have a Habs and Rocket related video throughout the week that you'll want to be sure that you're notified about when those come out. And there was a new one this past Thursday. It was a new Habs hockey report called "These Two Canadiens Prospects Are All-Star Game Bound." And I'm not going to tell you who they are because you got to go watch it. I'll tell you one of them. One of them is a repeat. Logan Mailloux got to go last year as a rookie, and he has been tapped to go in his second consecutive appearance for the AHL All-Star Game. He will be joined by another teammate, another Habs prospect, who is going to the All-Star Game for the very first time. So if you want to learn more about that, learn more about the All-Star Game, and some other prospect news, then head over to our YouTube channel and check that video out. It's a quick one. It's less than 7 minutes. Doesn't take very long to watch. And hope you like it and comment and enjoy it. So last week on the show, well, first I should say, don't forget, we want to hear from you about this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. One more reminder of what that is. Does the Canadiens' recent success change Kent Hughes' trade deadline strategy? Be sure to text us, leave a comment on social media or on YouTube, send us an email. We want to hear your thoughts on all of that, and we look forward to reading your comments on next week's show. This week, we got a lot of responses about last week's show. Last week, we talked about the 10 things that Habs fans can look forward to and expect from the Canadiens organization in this calendar year, in 2025. So that's the second half of this season, the off season, and then the first half of next season. And a lot of you had a lot of things to say. We're going to start with Facebook. And this is Tim K from St. John, New Brunswick, writes in and says, "Good morning. Bright skies are shining on the Habs this Saturday morning. I'm offering an observation rather than a question. As the Habs are now in the playoff picture, an interesting thing has happened where the upcoming Montreal-owned Calgary 2025 first-round draft pick, which is 19th, is now sitting just one pick behind the Habs pick, which is 18th. Not long ago, these picks were at opposite ends of the scale and are now trending to flip-flop positions. It's an interesting side effect pertaining to Montreal's invigorating resurgence. For those that are supporters of high picks, it would seem that the tank is officially in the tank. I am not one of those, and I feel the Habs have more than enough prospects and picks. This progression is a very welcome development. P.S. I'll be in Montreal for the 2 games next weekend, Toronto and New York Rangers. And a month ago, it didn't appear these games would have much meaning in the standings. Well, what a difference a couple of weeks makes. Have an amazing day, Tim K. Great comment, first of all, and kudos to you. You are definitely going to watch some meaningful games on your visit to Montreal next weekend. That's going to be a pretty fun Saturday, Sunday back-to-back. So congrats, and hope you enjoy those. And thanks so much for writing in. Those were some good comments that he made.
And a great observation there about those draft picks.
Yeah.
I have one from our email account. The Rocket Sports email is hello@rocketsportsmedia.com, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. This one comes from Arvi in Hancock, Michigan. Hi, that's HEI. Cheers from Hancock, home of Hakenpaiva. All right, first off, great show. I recently found the Canadiens Connection, and I appreciate your honest, objective takes on hockey. By the way, I looked up what Hakenpaiva is.
Yeah.
It's a Finnish festival celebrating Finnish culture in Hancock, Michigan. Apparently, Hancock, Michigan is something like Thunder Bay, like Thunder Bay is in Canada, home to lots of Finns. Hancock, Michigan is the same, and they have a festival, a winter festival called Hakenpaiva.
Nice.
That includes a wife-carrying obstacle course.
What?
That's what it's...
A wife-carrying obstacle course
in the snow, and then at the end of the obstacle course, you sit down and have coffee. It's...
okay.
Yeah. So I'll start. I'm sorry, Arvi. I'll start again. First off, great show. I recently found the Canadiens Connection, and I appreciate your honest, objective takes on hockey. I'll admit that I'm a Jets fan, but I've always liked Patrik Laine since he was drafted by Winnipeg. This season, when I was looking for information on Laine, I discovered your podcast and have been listening ever since. Thanks for what you said about Laine. You were spot on. What he said about Columbus was obviously wrong, and you can't blame that on him being Finnish. That's a myth about us only being able to tell the truth. In brackets, don't tell my wife. As you said, we can be very direct, and we just don't have the time. I'll edit here for BS. But we would rather be silent than offend someone on purpose. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Guys like Solani and Numanen were adored in Winnipeg because they always spoke kindly about fans and showed their appreciation. Last thing, I appreciate you sticking with the Finnish pronunciation of players' names. It's a sign of respect, and we value that.
Woohoo.
Thanks again. Keep up the work. And I'm going to struggle with this one.
Ustavallisen Tervaisen.
All right.
Ustavallisen Tervaisen. Which means best regards in Finnish.
From Arvi in Hancock, Michigan.
I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Love
Arvi, we're so glad that you're a new listener. We hope you listen for a long time, and we're happy to hear from you at any time.
And listener and fans from any team.
Absolutely.
In the NHL, AHL, or anywhere.
That's right. Finally, we shift over to YouTube, and She26 back once again with another very comprehensive reply to listening to last week's podcast. She says, I'm super stoked about Dobes. I know it's early yet, but what an awesome goalie he's been. Demidov is Demidov, and man, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do when he gets here. I just hope which she has shortened Roma Rotenberg's name to Rotten. I just hope Rotten will give him the ice time that he's been getting lately. I'm hopeful for Reinbacher. He deserves his chance, and I'm pumped about seeing how he does. Fowler, yes, love him. Plus, he cracks me up. Heineman rocks, Hudson rocks. What more can you say about those two guys? Too many good prospects, but I really like Mayu and Beck. Nope. Don't touch Evans or Savard. Not cool. In the draft, we'll see, I guess. Free agency, I really hope, that Kent Hughes will do something this year. We need an elite player. I do love Gooley, but please don't get rid of Savard. And number 10, she's obviously reacting here to each of our 10 things that Habs fans can look forward to this coming calendar year. She says, number 10, that's a tough one. I guess I'll be waiting to see what happens there. My concerns are both Slavkovsky and Newhook, mostly Slav, especially with that Kent Hughes huge panic signing contract. That, in my opinion, was just plain stupid, like really stupid. 8 years? Based on what? Suzuki teaching and helping him get points? Is Slav really doing any better, or is it based on him being on that line again? Well, since I already put in my 2 cents on the top 10, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'd like to see the Canadiens hire more coaches. Marty St. Louis, yuck. Since I know they won't be getting rid of him, I would at least hope for an add-on. A known, experienced coach would make my day, night, or life. Thanks again, guys. I look forward to your podcast every week. It is literally the best and most informative podcast on all of YouTube. Well, She26, we appreciate that very much. Always such a thorough job listening to every bit of the podcast and getting your opinions in on every little thing, and we appreciate that. So if you want to hear your response read out so that Habs fans can hear your words of wisdom, then be sure that you get your responses into this week's Canadiens Connection question of the week. And you have between now and next Saturday to do that. While you're busy doing that, the Canadiens will be busy playing 3 games on a relatively normal schedule this week, aside from some starting times. Saturday night, of course, they'll be at home with the visiting Dallas Stars. That game will take place at 7 o'clock. Tuesday night, Montreal heads out on the road. Again, they'll be visiting the Utah Hockey Club. That is a 9 o'clock Eastern start time out in Utah. And then Thursday, Montreal will visit Dallas themselves, and that's an 8 o'clock Eastern start time. So a typical Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday day of the week schedule, just a little bit wonky on the times because some of those are in some of the Western time zones. So 7 o'clock Saturday night, 9 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday night, 8 o'clock Eastern on Thursday night. And then we will be back here next Saturday, January 18th for the next episode of the Canadiens Connection podcast. And we thank you very much for being here. It's Great way to kick off 2025 is with all of you. It looks like it's going to be an exciting month for the Canadiens. We'll see if they can keep these winning ways going. And we look forward to hearing from you on the Canadiens Connection question of the week. Thanks so much for being with us. And you have been listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.